Are we ready? Okay. All right. So Julie's checking the camera here. Let's get going. All right. So we were talking about, George Falcon and his technique, which was, he basically came from an enormous wealth of information. I don't even know how many PhDs the guy had. And he used all that to try to communicate all the way, from the absolute beginner to masters. He would basically, non-discriminate with that. Where this class here, this is like the master class. That's what we're dealing with. Everybody here is a master of something. We have masters in degrees, masters maybe in like whether or not you have the credential or not. You may be a master of philosophy or something like that, a master of psychology or yoga. It doesn't really matter. All of us here that are going to be, watching this video, whether you're here right now or going to be later on the YouTube channel, we're here to, in a sense, what George used to call, let go of our chains of goals. That's what we're here. That's why this class can be a little tough with some of the things we're talking about here, because the self likes these achievements. It likes the plaque on the wall. It likes the diploma. It looks forward to a retirement party, right? It looks forward to those days, or we do a good job and someone compliments us. Right? That's the self enjoys that. I mean, we can't deny that that our brain feels much better when someone gives us a compliment, versus chastising us, right? That's where we're at, and that's what we're trying to convey here as to be is we're taking the mastery to another level. Now, Julie brought up a good point earlier that realistically, the only thing George wanted us to be masters of was letting go and being still. That was really the only thing he wanted us to be masters of. But remember, that's a master of doing that. Will letting go and being still wake you up? Yeah, it's better than not doing that. Right? I mean, so if we're holding on, we're basically turning our head away from the light. That's basically the fall from grace in Adam and Eve's story, is that they started holding on. And so therefore they lost the kingdom of heaven. You can't hold on to the kingdom of heaven. Well, number one, as we know in biology, it's the wrong frequency of the brain. So we need to move to the frontal lobe, where there is neither holding on nor letting go. We can't even say if we're holding on or letting go, coming from that frequency. And of course, that's why we need to keep that moniker of letting go and being still. Now, one of the negative, positive things about that is the self doesn't like that. It's not a very exciting diploma to have received to put on your wall. That, I have a doctorate in letting go. Someone looks at that and they go, you're a what? Yeah, I have a doctorate in letting go. It's like anything that gets in my way, I just let it go. Yeah, George used to call them, we should be known as the releasers. That's what our movement should be, not Wu Wu Wei. What is that? Releasers. The Releasers. It sounds like some punk rock band from the late 70s. Hey, we're the Releasers, man. Let's go. Right? Yeah, go. That would be much more entertaining. We should write some punk rock music. We're going to the Releasers. The humor just floweth. So let's just, but let's stick with that. I mean, wouldn't it be great if, we called up, your best friend and say, hey, how's the releasing going? I mean, how many times do we call mom up and say, how's the releasing going, mom? I don't think I've ever had that conversation with my biological mother. So it's like, maybe Meredith has, but I'm probably the only one here who has ever had that, maybe something similar, but the conversation. But it's just like, we're here to release, as bodies. And, well, of course, the final thing of letting go is letting go of letting go. Exactly. So realistically, that's, what we're here for, is to eventually, okay, we're letting go. We're letting go. Letting go of the so-called negative things is really obvious, right? Something's annoying us, oh God, I need to let that go. Even normal humans say that, people that are not on the path, they even made a song called Letting Go, right? From Frozen. So it was like, so it's a popular adage of letting go. But it's always about, things that are kind of negative. The good things is sometimes the hardest stuff to think, well, God, I'm kind of obsessed about this over here. And it's like, maybe I need to mix it up a little bit. We think this is something good. But as we know, all good things, that the term goes, do come to an end. Why? Well, it's just physics, right? Isn't it? That, yin, yang, that's just phenomenon, right? That's just what it does. Now, the self doesn't believe that. The self thinks that's a load of bull hickey. Bunch of cow pucky, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't think that really exists. So it's going to trim reality. It's going to take, this is all that happened. And realistically, it's on this. But it goes, no. It was really like this. Or it was always bad. It was all bad. It was all good. Now, didn't the Buddha say that it's erroneous to think that all things are extinguished? That's from the Diamond Sutra. It's erroneous to think that all things are extinguished. Now, isn't that the self's worst fear? Extinguished, disappearing, losing, loss, lack, right? So that's its worst fear, is that it's erroneous. So when the Buddha's saying this, he's saying, look, it's erroneous. And what's this, a synonym for erroneous? A lie. And then George used to talk about the lie, right? So he's saying it's erroneous. So there's got to be more that we're got to be missing something. It's like we say it was all good, it was all bad, or this is just what happened. We just paint whitewash right over it instead of paying attention and saying, "Well, it was good." Well, it kind of was like, okay, it was, and then this one over here. Oh, okay, so that's what happened. And it's also in the Bible in a bunch of places, but I'm not sure 100% sure where the names are exact, and I've got the picture in my head. But it was basically like Elijah and was it Elias? I forgot the two names of the people. That Elias said it to Elijah, or whichever one it was, that he said, if you can track my death all the way up, in return you will get, I think he said like 3 portions of the kingdom of heaven or something like that. I'm completely butchering the quote. But the point is that if you could track me from his death all the way wherever he wound up, like death, right? Wink, 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 death. That in the sense that nothing was extinguished. So even in the Bible, there were people of that frequency that were aware that there was no death. I mean, the body, okay, they didn't have that body anymore. We can see it laying there. But we can watch whatever it is that kept going, whatever word we want to put on that. Right? So they could see it. When you read like Zen pillars or things in Zen, they'll talk about that. Well, okay, I'm using some of George's terms, but that's just how it is. That waking up, or in them, enlightenment, that's the term they would use. You basically are just not just, and how George would say it, you're not obsessed with your location here. That you're basically aware of, oh, I'm on the tree too, or I am the tree. Or, I'm also that skyscraper downtown. That you are bigger than what you're seeing here. So if you're that big, well then you're not going to associate you with this body. It's part of it. And as you raise your frequency, you see more. I mean, George used to talk about it. It's like going up in an elevator. Basically saying, as you go up in the elevator, you see more. And you get to the top, you see everything. You would see all of your past lives, all everybody else's past lives, all at once. And then on top of it all, you could see what is known as the possible future. And if you could see the possible future, how could yourself make any mistakes at that point? You could say, oh, just go this way, make a left over at the light, down the street. Which is what we call intuition. It's just a little more practical because you are it. So if we're going to be any kind of master here, there is a certain word that is used in the, more like Zen, things like that. There were more of the stricter philosophies, not the broader ones. It's a word that's called non. So it's like, okay, there's attainment, right? There's that term. The self can say, all of us here as masters say, I attain something. We can all say here that we have all, who are listening to this, have all attained the ability to introspect, or otherwise known as thinking. That the human race, the Homo sapien, is a master of thinking. Sometimes to better degrees than others, but in general, all humans know how to think. So if we say attainment, to get to the next level, we're going to call it non-attainment. But still something happens. So we could even call ourselves masters of non. That in a sense, from non, doesn't non have more of a connotation of letting go? That is, you're not really holding on to it, but you can still say something happened? So, non-attainment. It's like the light when we meditate, right? Did you achieve seeing the light? No, we kind of got relaxed enough and it just appeared. So we could say getting to the light was an act of non-attainment. But something did happen. And the best part about the light, it's always there. We're just, thinking that it isn't. Now, Julie played something very interesting to me today. It was on one of those YouTube commercials that popped up. I didn't hear the rest of it because she changed the channel. But I thought this was really interesting. The guy that was talking, sounded really proud of himself. So I figured I'd repeat it. And, so he said that the human mind, produces 70,000 thoughts a day. Even if that's even remotely true, holy smokes, 70,000 thoughts. Now, I didn't get to hear what his point was. I wasn't sure where he was going with that. But I was like, even if that's just remotely true, whoa. I mean, if what we're trying to do is ignore our thoughts, if we're trying to do is get above our thoughts, Now we can understand why, as Homo sapiens, the masters of thinking, that if we're supposed to getting past that frequency, wow, talk about Mount Everest of of tasks. I mean, George has talked about it. I've talked about it. Julie's talked about it. I'm sure you guys would talk about it. That it takes a superhuman effort to do what we're doing here. To go to the Sudden School, the self is just not that excited about it. And it really takes something extra. It really takes something more from the particular person. People that like to achieve things, this is going to be a tough pill to swallow. Because you really have to get in a sense of letting go. You really have to get in a sense of that right here, right now, you, it's like I point up there, which is not the body, or yourself, or your soul, or anything, is free right here, right now. Right here, right now. And here's probably the number one problem. And when they say, when masters say here's number one problem you might want to pay attention to, here's one. You really have to believe you can do it. You really have to believe. You cannot go into this thing, well, like the average spiritual shopper. I'll get a little bit of that. I'll get a little bit of this. Or maybe I'll I'll believe something like that. Or you know what? I'm going to translate that into something else. Something that I like better. That's the second thing that students make mistakes on. Is they translate. They transmute something. A master will say, right here, right now, you are free. Oh, I don't know, okay, I like this better. This guy over here says something better than that. I don't approve of that. No, you take that at face value. Okay, maybe the words aren't specific, to your experience. But take a grain of salt with the master. Said, why would George lie to you when he said that? Right there. It's like, was he just up there for his health? I don't know. In the end, same with Christ. And he says, know ye not you are gods? It even isn't in your scripture say that. He was quoting the scripture when he said that. He didn't make that up. But I also would say this not to really defend the Pharisees, but, and it's too bad maybe certain people aren't here tonight to hear this part, but maybe they'll hear it something if they go back and click on it, that the born-again Christian, if they are still talking from the self when they're talking to all of us, are they really a born-again Christian? No. A born-again Christian should know they're free. They should know it. And then share that with all of us. Now, I'm not saying that all the churches need to close. No, we're all at different levels. But realistically, the born-again Christian, that you should know that your body is just light. Isn't that what the born-again, he said, you have to be reborn again in spirit. He wasn't talking about the corporal body. That's why when you read the scripture, you hear the scripture, it doesn't make any sense. Not maybe to us, we'd get it. But to the average person, you have to have someone interpret it. That's why our Sundays are all about interpreting these lines that, Jesus said, if we're lucky. But realistically, it was like, if you are coming from the light, meaning that if you are coming from, hopefully, theta waves, even better, delta. If you're coming from delta, oh yeah, that is so. But If you're not coming from that, your self will go, huh? What? No, I don't. Okay, no, those are nice words, but I don't think they apply to me. So, we're here when we meditate, in a sense, to become born again Christians. Maybe see the light. And hopefully go, oh, that's my body. But that's not the only route. And of course, that still has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's sure better than anything else. Because if you are always coming from Delta, eventually you'll go, oh, right here, right now. And under certain conditions, my body will appear as the light. Under certain conditions, my body will, appear as this corporal thing. Under certain conditions, it might be a mental body. But you are none of that. None of that. There are very few religions out there that teach this way. That's why we're so popular. We sometimes it's like the pulpit here is on fire, and I'll go check YouTube, and we got 5 listens. And I'm like, well, I guess that wasn't very popular that night. Realistically, humans got it all wrong. I'm not gonna beat on Swifties or whatever they are out there. It's like, but it's realistically, people should be seeking out the artist that doesn't have a lot of followers. Because they may have something more interesting to say. But, everybody wants to go, to McDonald's or Taco Bell, and so they go follow that music. And that's the same for us. Ironically, our lack of popularity probably is indicative of, something. You guys can fill in the blank there. I can't say anything about that. But it's like, there's something there. I mean, realistically. George was talking to me about the Mayans at one time. The Mayans at one point were masters of mastery. And I hope I don't embarrass him by telling you guys one of his stories he told me. You guys may have heard it or not, but I guess he was visiting Mexico at some point. And he liked to seek out sometimes the custodians and sometimes people that were working around the pyramids down there in Mexico City. And I guess he was talking to some guy, and he was kind of like, he started saying, okay, what was the Mayan religion? And he would spout out what was, the McDonald's version of the Mayan religion. And then he would go, oh, okay, now, but what did your grandmother talk about the Mayan religion? And they said, did they know how to, they were like, oh yeah, they used to say they used to visit the other planets. And, I remember this, the person telling the story, I'm not going to completely tell it, it went over and it did his version of checking up on the story, of visiting wherever he visited, and I'm not going to fill all that in. If you want to know that, you can text me sometime and I'll give you that information personally, but I'm not going to put it on here. But basically, George confirmed what the person was talking about regarding the mastery. But they're basically saying, yeah, the masters used to just astral project out to Jupiter. That's how they made their maps so accurate. That their clocks were could be tuned to almost like an atomic clock. When the mathematicians were checking up on the Mayans, their math was impossible. They knew this stuff. But it turns out they could astral project. But it was all limited to a tiny circle of masters. And everybody else was basically doing all the little, all the, whatever the magic tricks they were doing, the religions and, the basic, going to church, we'll just say that, or going to do yoga or go to the Zen temple, like what people of the Western/Eastern philosophies followed. But then there's, I remember this one time we were at George Meeker's, one of the older offices. I don't know if that was his original or not, I remember we were there, and I was just sitting there, just like going, it was like 12 people there, looking around, and George is just on fire, and I'm going. I just finally had to raise my hand. And I say, "Isn't it fascinating that we're listening to this discourse, this enlightened discourse, and we're basically hiding out, but look like a supply room, basically, or a back office room in George Meeker's, real estate office." And I was just kind of blown away at that moment of the lack of popularity of what he was talking about. But it was so clear to me that this is not for everyone. Although everybody has to take the class someday. It really, they'll just keep coming back until they gotta take the class. Until we'll all keep coming back until we get it. Maybe not in this dimension, but a higher dimension. That's what we're here for. So, the lack, unfortunate of the word, of the ferocity, of the resolve of the self in this path is normal. The self was, unfortunately, and I think we're all mature enough to hear this, that we really shouldn't be proud of our plaques on the walls. We say, "Oh, okay, that was just training." If we achieved anything, we should be like, dirty rags. That's this path. That it's total and utter single-pointed mindedness. That right here, right now, you are free. And this thing is what's getting in your way. The self. We'll just call it that right now. That thing is insidious. It'll compliment you. It'll pat you on the back. It'll say, "Oh, you being such a good young boy and girl. You're so handsome. You're so cute." Like how we talk to little dogs. They're, "Oh, you're so cute." It'll say, "Oh, you don't have to do that. Oh, you're a good person." Isn't that the Screw Tape letters? That, Screw Tape's like, "What are you doing, man?" To Screw Tape, Wormwood, or whatever it was. He's like, no. You don't want him to get excited about this. You want him to start thinking how pious he's being. And then can self-congratulate how pious he's being. You don't want him to do that, spontaneously. Oh, we don't want that at all. That's the path back to, the enemy, as he called it. We want him to be proud of how good a person he is. How, like in this world, we want to, go on TV and tell everybody that how much we've donated to charity. Because we want our tax deduction. Or we want to look good at the Democratic National Convention. We're just, what do they call it? Unconditional charity. I don't know what Buddha called it. He says, that's the Diamond Switcher straight up, unconditional charity. No. Heck, even Jesus said it. What did he say? But they say a camel could go through eye of a needle more than a rich man could. I mean, think about that. We're not talking about wealth. We're talking about someone who declares himself great. I know. Look, we're back to Caine and Kung Fu, right? People asked him, why you're a monk. You're a person of reason. You're a master of Kung Fu. What are you doing out here shoveling, horse dewey out here? And he just looked at him and he said, "It's honorable work." So the next time our self is getting congratulatory, the next time someone says, "Oh God, you're a great, I'm so happy you helped me," don't think this thing. It's just a loop. Self-congratulatory loop. You know, it was interesting. I have a friend who I grew up with. And, you know, it was interesting. We were like kids growing up, like in, you know, Cub Scouts first and Boy Scouts. We went to school through together. You know, we built models, you know, blew things up as nerdy kids do, you know. Yeah, you know, had a good time. You know, he went one way, went another, but it always kind of wind up around each other again. You know, got his pilot's license and go flying with him. You know, we'd almost die. Things like, you know, fun stuff that kids do. And, you know, we even had a little band, you know, it's the musician thing. We'd been there rocking it out. But he decided to, you know, go in the Air Force, you know, and he got far. He got to become a full bird colonel. And he just last year, you know, he just, you know, after how many years it was, you know, retired. And we got to watch since there was the COVID thing going on last year and all that, we just watched it online. It was kind of interesting. Although it was funny, he quoted, you know, me in there once, and I was like, whoa, he brought me up after all that time. I thought that was kind of cool. But, you know, I was watching this, and I was going, you know, it was a small retirement party for a full bird colonel. You know, I was kind of thinking there'd be more people there and all that. But then he got out, and his kids still needed to go through college. And so he had to get in, you know, he just went out into the corporate world, and now he's still working. So he had his retirement party, but now he had to go work. And I'm just going, you know, none of us should ever retire. None of us. Everybody that watches this discourse, now I'm talking about, you know, the world work. You know, if someday you stop doing that and you have some sort of pension or something, well, fine. But don't ever retire. Not from the path. Don't ever. Never, ever, ever, ever stop. The self is insidious. All it wants is that retirement party. But guess what? Well, you know, there's something else after that. Oh, and it gets better. I bet we could all go into some past life right now. And imagine our retirement party from some past life. It might have been a little different back in those days, but there was always something that was some sort of retirement. Maybe you're too old to work in the fields anymore, or whatever it was. So you already did it. So, you know, give yourself a pat on the back. You know, hey, I retired. And keep going. Don't ever stop. Because the self will pat itself on the back and say, oh, I don't need to meditate today. Oh, I don't need to count my breathing or be aware of my breath today. Oh, I don't need to be in awareness today. Oh, I'm not going to do it. It'll come up with an excuse every 5 minutes to not do this. Why? It doesn't want to lose control. Right? And that's what it likes. It loves control. I mean, it wakes up in the morning looking for something familiar. Trying to remember who it is, what its name is. What do I do? Oh, right. Its favorite cup of coffee. Its favorite, bagel. Because that is it trying to maintain control. And now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have your favorite cup of coffee. I'm not saying you should have your favorite bagel. But pay attention to what the self is doing. Always pay attention to what the self is doing. I'm going to repeat it again. Always pay attention to what the self is doing. Because if you're not paying attention, then you're asleep. And like we said, we shouldn't even be not aware when we're sleeping. We should always be aware. Now, it's always easier to be aware when we're doing less. So wouldn't that be kind of, as we're all getting older here, to try to do less, not more? Try, depending on our karma. Our karma is our karma, so I mean, I still remember the story George used to tell me, probably told you guys too, that he woke up teaching like, I don't know how many classes at the university, and then taking 2 forms of Qigong. A master at 2 forms of Qigong. Wow, talk about an overachiever. And then he woke up and went, oh, I don't need to, I didn't have to do all that. But at the time, his karma was leading up to that. But after he woke up, it was like, oh, no, you don't need to do all that. But, he had stocked his brain with so much information that, he was like, well, I guess I'll share it. Thank God, right? I mean, depending on, I don't care what your level of appreciation of him for it was, we can all of us who are watching this got something from George, right? Everybody who clicked play on this YouTube channel later on can say they got something from the guy. A door was open. Now back to those 70,000 thoughts. The trick with us, the hopeful trick, is that in between one of those 70,000 thoughts, there will be and then all it takes, and that's the wonderfulness about this path, all it takes, and to use the vernacular in this modern times, is a skip in the matrix. Because that was very insightful, what they called the matrix, in the Matrix movie, because basically what the thought pattern is that you're witnessing is a matrix of ideas. So what we're looking for is a skip in that matrix. That for a nanosecond, and it can be that small, that it falters. And that's why meditation, contemplation, slowing down, letting go, being still, is a glitch. Glitch in the matrix. And that doesn't say, that doesn't say much for the human race about thinking. We're unfortunately, go to school to learn to think. My God, by the time we're, in college, we should be going the other way. But we just keep cranking it down. Think more, think. And then we go out and think some more and find other people how they think. And then we go, and then some people are so interested in thinking, they love to go find out how everybody else wants to think. And it's going farther and farther and farther away. We learn to think because we're trying to get out of, the emotional body. We're trying to transmute Annabelle by saying, stop. Because Annabelle doesn't like to stop. It sees stopping as death. So, and we can equate that to Virgil, the mind state, that if it doesn't know, that's like stopping for the self. It doesn't like that statement. I don't know. It'll keep sniffing around until it finds something that'll make it feel better. So here, we want to take the message that the Buddha, the Christ, Lao Tse, whatever is saying, and we want to take it at face value. We want to take it literally. We don't want to make a metaphor out of it. Now, talking about the truth as it is gets metaphorical. But we want to say that certain words point us in the right direction. So we don't want constricting, limiting thoughts. We want expanding, positive thoughts, non-limiting thoughts, freedom, complete, eternal. Those are not limiting thoughts. And I'm not even going to say the limiting ones, because unfortunately we're always, not us here, but humans have mastered the limiting thoughts. That's why they're stuck doing what they're doing. Now remember, this is a tough piece too. This is kind of tough. Is there really anything solid? Is there anything really secure? Is there really anything that's concrete in the world? Realistically. It looks that way, right? It looks that way. Maybe I might feel that way. But we have to start getting on the other side of it and say that's a lie. Because if we stick with seeing things as solid, we stick with things as routine, as we stick with things that are safe, we're stuck with the lie. We're in Screwtape's world. We're in the human world. Bless you. So it's like, the thing is that we want to we talked about subatomics. I don't know if the recording was on, but the other thing about the subatomic level is that things are not solid down there. Right, Geordi said, E equals mc squared. But remember, George didn't add the speed of light to it. He was just E to m. The energy equals matter. Remember that. So we want to be moving to the E column, not the M column. Because remember the word phenomenal, right? George loved that. Phenomenon, phenomenal. If we're seeing things as phenomenon, like, like here's this glasses case, or you can see it. That's phenomenon because we call it that. It's a thing. But that's actually really a lie. From what we're talking about here. That if we're coming from E, it's preformed. It doesn't have a form yet. We can't call it a glasses case yet. It's only when we becomes from phenomenal back to phenomenon, then we can call it that. It's like the Tao that cannot be named versus the Tao that can. It's the same. E equals to M. We could call the E the nirvanic phase. With the M, samsara. So it's all there. We just need to start moving towards the E column. So, and moving away from the M. And that it's also a mindset is that that's where the, letting go and being still comes from. Because the M side is holding on. Yeah. Right. Julie said that. It's all made up. But if we don't see that, then it's hard to convince, that it's true. It's like, I don't know if anybody has ever practiced seeing auras or if you can see them as they are, but it's a good exercise of practicing to see auras because you get to see that, start moving towards phenomenal versus phenomenon. That you're starting to see the energetic portion before we see the M. Julie talked about, the other day, I could see the anus. Remember that term George used to talk about, the little packets of energy? So it's as you move towards that, and some of you already may be there now, you need to stop taking the solidic, that's a new word, the solid world, so seriously. Start to let go. Remember that exercise? George told us, okay, everybody, let's grip our hand. That's holding. Is that comfortable after a while? Let go. Holding. Let go. And it's that simple. You set an intention, holding on, letting go. And even doing that, right now, I'm going, whoa, it's like all the energy, there's space, there's like, the brain already says, okay, I know what to do. That's why we just gotta practice. And dang, that self will get in our way with that, So just pay attention to that insidious little bee known as the self that wants to be our best friend. Wants to tell us how we're doing a great job. Wants to congratulate ourselves for sacrificing ourselves. But don't get down on yourself or don't congratulate yourself. Just watch the soul. That's what the self's doing. It's like, when you're seeing the neighbor's dog, it's not even your dog. And they're just around sniffing backyard, around the daisies, doing their deed and whatever, all that. Wasn't that interesting? That's what the dog's doing. We want to get to that position where we're just watching our dog. Whether it does something positive, whether it does negative. Eventually, the differences will make no difference. Whether it does something good, whether it does something bad. But you won't even call it that. To you, it would be closer to calling it to activity. It'd be like saying, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm sure, Meredith, as a scientist, when you get, some new data that you didn't know before, you probably stop and go, oh, isn't that interesting? That's just what we do when we learn something new. We go, oh, isn't that interesting? You what's the way you're looking at it? You're not surprised, but you are surprised. Oh, okay. Another Georgism that he used to talk about was, the master was no fun to play cards with because he would always bring his own deck. It's the same thing. But we can say that, he would bring it up also. The other analogy with cards is like, okay, you're going to go to a poker game. And they're going to give you $100. Right? $100. And they're going to hand it to you. But they're going to say, well, you have to hand it back, whatever you won, back at the end of the night. It didn't matter if you won or lost. You got to just hand it $100 back. Well, you're going to play differently. You're basically going to play differently because you're not going to really gain or lose anything. It's the same thing coming from that frequency. Julie had one of her canvases of showing Jordy earlier. We don't think we had it on camera. And she said it's just like, what we should be seeing is just a play of lights in the end. And the self might recoil to that. Well, we need to move to a higher frequency so the play of lights is not scary for it. It'll actually be blissful. We will see the perfection of the transcendental wisdom, of the transcendental enlightenment. That it is erroneous to think that anything is extinguished. It's erroneous. It's a lie. It's a lie. And look, E equals M. What else did Einstein say? That matter, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That's a Zen koan in itself. Well, then where did it come from? I mean, Einstein should have looked at that and went, well, where did it come from? Although with him, he didn't want to let go of his idea of God. And people made fun of him for that. But if we call it source, then you created it. And didn't George say, once you reach the end? I feel like he's smiling at me right now. That everything is just psychological. Everything. It's just a matter of how you see it. And you are free that if you don't like what you see, you can change it. All levels of freedom. And the self balks at that. Bah humbug. Well, then you go, yeah, thank you for that information. I'm not going to take that as my authority. But thank you for that. No, isn't that interesting? That's just a thought, right? Whoa. You're going to get the self to run away at that one. And that's just a thought. Unfortunately, whatever it is that, okay, I'm going to use the vernacular now. You call yourself, or people call you. I'm going to have to hate to break it to you, but it's just an idea. It's just an idea. I mean, that thing we thought was so great. It's just an idea. I can guarantee the self doesn't like that statement. But that matrix of ideas, it's just one thought. I am, and then filled in the sentence. Right? I am filled in the sentence. But if we went, I am, and stopped, It's a different experience, isn't it? You may hear a clamor of, hey, that's not right up in your head. But that's just the self. Look, oh, yeah, that's interesting. Look at how the self is doubting right now. Look how the brain is doubting right now. Isn't that interesting? Well, I wonder what, belief I'm holding on to that created that doubt. Maybe I need to let go of it. I am Brian. Oh, that's a lie. Let go of that. I am Julie. Oh, that's a lie. Let go of that. I am Jordy. That's a lie. Let go of that. I am Meredith. Let go of that. I am April. Let go of that. I am. And then someday, which some of you, hopefully all of you, have experienced, the other I am. That there is another one. One that's greater than what you believe that's here, experiencing here. Because we have the, and remember the house experiment where we have the inner space and the outer space? Well, here, with the, I guess what George used to call personal chi, or whatever he called it, or personal, nobody called it, versus universal chi. And so we have the inside of the house, the outside of the house, and they match. The other I am is like the space outside of the house. And then there's the third space. And that one is the closest thing we can point to you. We're in that model. That's a model, remember that. It's not an actual thing. We use that to help wake us up, to help get our mind. It was like Subhuti walking up to Buddha and say, Venerable One, how do we control our thoughts? And the third space exercise, the bags, the 3 bags with the so-called 4th bag, the helicopter exercise. And for me, we talked about this last time. We talked about, let's remember a past life. Let's see if all of us can remember a past life. And if, you haven't done that before, just make one up. Make up a past life right now. See if you could see that person in a past life. I want you to see them going about their life, just doing whatever. Maybe they're tending their garden. Maybe they're working in the fields. Look at them going through their life. And then I want you to watch them die. Their body die. Watch them die. Put them in the ground. Who died? You? No. The body apparently looks like it dies, but you kept going. It's as simple as that. The problem is when we wake up from doing that, we go, oh, it's got to be more to it than that. No. If we could just hold on to that you didn't die. And if we want to add a little fine tip to it, to the point of the sword, you don't die because you were never born. So how can you die if you're never born? Well, the self could come up with a philosophy on that, but ignore it. Why? Because it can't. Because a thought is always based on a perceived lack. A thought is always based, if you are thinking there is a perceived lack, always. That means there's something missing, which is a lie. So thoughts are just lies, unfortunately. They're actually there just to make you and Annabelle feel better. The self and Annabelle. They come up with some theory. No, I like that theory, No, I don't like Darwin's theory of evolution. I'm more of a, creationist. Oh, okay, that makes me feel better. I don't like science. Or vice versa, whatever. It makes your dog feel better. Oh, okay. But Virgil thinks he came up with that. Here's another George thing. Does Virgil have an energy source? A direct energy source? No. The mind, the intellect, has no direct energy source. So it either has to go visit Annabelle, or it has to go to Beatrice, which is the superconscious. It has no direct energy source. and it will not exist without one or the other. It has no power. It just doesn't light up. So when I go back and do that exercise of watching the person go through their lives, look at that. Oh, isn't that interesting? You know, oh, they had some good times, they had some bad times. Kind of similar to what's going on here. And then we watch them die. Oh, okay. Could be a good death. Could have been a bad one. Whatever. Didn't matter. But you didn't die. And guess what? You already in your next past life right now. Right now. And look, this gets even better. I guess we're all fired up tonight. The body, this little corporal thing that we're seeing right now, or hopefully you're seeing E, but if you're not, we're looking at the M, has a 7-year life cycle. So realistically, didn't you know that you really are only 7 years old? That you should only be known as, oh, I'm 6. Oh, I'm 3. Oh, I'm 1. Or I'm 7. And after 7, back to 1. And it makes that little sound too. So it's just like, it's just after 7, back to 1. Because all the cells in the body just regenerate. Well, that's a scientific fact. I didn't make that one up. All the cells just, but, let's bring in, Einstein now, like George used to talk about E equals M. But he always thought there should be an I in there too, with like a little parentheses with an I, called intelligence. That there is an overarching intelligence to E to M. So in those 7 years, guess what you are doing? You're making up what you look like. That entire 7 years. So it's all a story. And that's why we need to move to E, to see how our beliefs, see how our mind is creating this self here, creating our story. Is it a good story? Or is it, ugh, dang, I'm going through some tough times. Fortunately, we put it all in there. And we got to own up to it. So E equals M, but there's that, we'll put a parentheses next to it, an I. That there is an intelligence that's governed it. Has to be. It always fascinates me. You put on, some science program and they talk about the Big Bang Theory. And it's like, we're just some random blip in the universe. Wow. Go talk to some probability and statistics person and ask them to figure out the probability of that is going to be. They would look at shaking their head and tell you to leave. They'd throw the calculator at you and tell you to leave. They're like, there's no mathematical equation that's big enough to create the probability of creating a random blip out of a Big Bang Theory that created this planet. And everybody on it and all the human race and evolution and down the line. I don't want to bake anybody's noodle here, but shouldn't we just go back to creationism at that point? I'm saying the planet's 6,000 years old, but does it matter it's any greater or longer or shorter than that to us right now? No. That right here, right now, we are creating our universe. So whatever happened that looks like when we go, do our little geology experiments or archaeology experiments, and we see what happened. Oh, we got to do our carbon-14 dating and all that. It just was there. And then at the end, that's just screw tape trying to complicate everything. He wants us to look at the history, look at the facts. Versus grok, the answer. The Socratic method, right? That you know the answer, you just have to allow yourself to remember. And as, going to play in the freeway, is that a great place to learn to remember? No. Why? Because it causes acidity, distractions. And people love that. Isn't it amazing nowadays? Isn't it amazing that we basically live in the era of distractions? The amounts of distractions that are going on these days is insane. It's crazy. I mean, it's amazing that anybody could even wake up at this point. Which is, again, going back to our little group here. That's why it's not popular. Because we're talking about letting go and being still. And that is the absolute back-ass direction that what people want these days. They want to be distracted. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. And if they don't like themselves, they'll go change it and make a new one. Go add another self on top of the self that you already have. Wow, that's going to be tough at this point. Interestingly enough, is that we all have one heck of a job to do in waking up. And the world is going to try to get you to be distracted. And unfortunately, they're going to make it sound so good. They're going to make it sound so wonderful. They're going to make it sound like this is going to make you a better person. This is going to, you're going to get to heaven doing this. And we just talked about what heaven was. Heaven is not the upper astral plane, which is what everybody makes it out to be. No. You go to the upper astral plane, you'll be going to the lower one if you don't look out. It does exist, but the kingdom of heaven that Christ talked about was the light, was E, coming from that frequency, the highest frequency where you can go to, where you see the truth, you see as a fact. What Buddha said, that it is erroneous to declare that anything is ever extinguished. You will see it. And you can laugh. Ah! It was right in front of my face the entire time. And then you can be the laughing Buddha. They show those laughing Buddhists, And that's why he was laughing. He's like, guys, it's so simple. It's right in front of you. The open secret, yeah. Why? Because you're paying attention to this thing. It's crying, it's pissing, it's moaning, or it's celebrating itself. Look how great I am. And Buddha's laughing at you going, "What did you know you're that tree there? Didn't you know you're those rocks? Didn't you know you're the heavens and the earth? What are you paying attention to this thing for? You're bigger than that. You're greater than that. You are all things at once, at the same time. All things. Both it's positive, both it's negative. You, from a certain perspective, now this is just from a certain perspective, you could be life and you could be death. There is no difference coming from you. That the differences make no difference at that point. So going from that, it's like, driving down the freeway or going and finding a quiet library where you want to study for your test. We want to make it peaceful. So we're going to do a meditation now. So let's get ourselves comfortable, and Julie will get the recorder to do its thing.